Hey, Chief, it's so great to talk to you. I'm so excited to learn more about the work that you're doing there. As we discussed, I have a little bit of a history in Pittsburgh going back 50 years. I have a little bit of roots there too. So I'm excited to talk to you and get some updates. Briefly, just state your background, in particular, your history in Pittsburgh and policing.
Sure. Yeah, I am currently serving as the Pittsburgh Police Chief. I've been here about 6 months. Prior to that, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I spent 21 years with the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police and retired at the rank of commander. But during my tenure, in addition to, all the routine stuff, patrol, sergeant, lieutenant, I was the commander of a district that had a number of issues between police and community. We put a lot of programs and a lot of time and effort into kind of mending those relationships and working with the youth. My last assignment before retiring was the commander of narcotics and vice. And as part of that, I oversaw our Nuisance Bar Task Force, which I know is, relative to what we're talking about today. Back in 2021, I left the Bureau of Police to take a job as chief of police in Frederick, Maryland. I spent the last 5 years in Frederick, and great town, fun city. And I was offered the police chief job back here in Pittsburgh when the new mayor, Corey O'Connor, took office back in January. So I've been back for about 6 months, and it's been a busy 6 months.
Yeah, so you got some roots. Like I told you, we were working there, I think it was from 2011 to 2013, 2014. I don't know if you were around in that period of time, but
Yeah, I am trying to think where I back in 2013 or 2014, I was probably a lieutenant at one of the district stations, one of the zones. I think it was 2015 I was became commander of one of the stations. So yeah, I was a
uh,
lieutenant back then. But
yeah.
yep, came on the job in 2000.
Yeah, the guy we worked with in the South Side was Larry Sirota.
Oh,
He
Larry
was
Scarato. Yes, we go way
Sgrado.
back.
Yeah, he was a
One of my
commander.
good friends and prior police chief right before me here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I know that you've had a lot of experience over the years, obviously, but coming back for this past 6 months, what has percolated up as some of the top issues relative? We always talk about social activity where people gather, for dining and entertainment and, socializing, events, markets, whatever. But just kind of that density of people gathering where they're socializing. What do you see the top issues in the city of Pittsburgh?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess it goes without saying, but I always feel the need to say it anyways. I mean, we always have to be laser focused on violent crime and quality of life issues. So, no matter what program or initiative or fun new thing we do or technology we roll out, if we're not paying attention to violent crime and quality of life issues, we're not doing our job. So, obviously, that's number one. But that said. A couple things that are high up, on our radar now would be the South Side. So for those that are not from Pittsburgh or familiar with Pittsburgh, the South Side, the Carson Street corridor was historically the city's most active bar district. Things have changed over time, and we have a couple other kind of bar districts now that have popped up. But the South Side, one of the issues that we've seen is some recent violence and some fights, particularly later on in the evening when the bars are really crowded or they're getting ready to close. People have had too much to drink. They're packed in there. And what do they say? They got their beer muscles.
Hmm.
And so we put a tremendous amount of resources, staffing, in the time that I was gone, and the time that I was in Maryland. They actually created a specific full-time unit, and all these officers do is work the bar district Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They work a 10-hour shift, and all they do is walk beats, ride bikes, and patrol the bar district. So that's something that's kind of very prominent on our radar. This summer, actually, tomorrow night, we're getting ready to start what we're referring to as a pilot program where we actually take about 6 or 7 blocks of East Carson Street, where most of the bars are, the bars that get really busy. And we're going to be closing the street down, and we're going to be really concentrating our officers. We're going to have security guards as well, kind of acting as a force multiplier, and we're going to be opening up the street so people can, uh, mill about. They can have their alcoholic beverages out in the street, and we're doing that. We want to create an environment where we're not having to deal with intoxicated patrons, and also heavy vehicular traffic. We're going to be routing these vehicles around on the side streets, and so we can really keep Carson Street open for the people that are out and about at the bars. So we want to see how this goes. We have quite a few resources. Probably most importantly, I think, is that this is a community-led effort. We have a significant amount of buy-in from the community. So this wasn't us coming in saying this is how it's going to be. This was the community and the police working collaboratively to kind of come up with a creative solution to some of the issues we're seeing over on Carson. So um, I almost wish this interview was next week so I could tell you how the first week went. But this will be every Friday and Saturday night for the summer.
Okay.
And so
Now, how's this going to impact, like a lot of people these days use Uber and Lyft and taxis, and that's all part of the movement of people at closing time. I would imagine that this strip itself may have been a drop-off or pickup location. Do you have any plans for coordinating that?
Sure. So there are going to be designated drop off and pickup points. Those entry and exit points will be staffed by private security, and the private security will be carding people. So once you come into the footprint, you won't need to be carded again. It's going to be over 21, and and then at the end of the night, when you call your Uber or your Lyft, you can designate which pickup or drop off point that you want them to go to. So again, not saying 100% that this is the solution, but it was something that we came to together, with the community, and we said let's give this a shot and see how it goes. And so you don't know if you don't try.
Now,
Um,
weapons are often, as I've worked in other cities like Kansas City, where they've set up this kind of closed barricaded entry point, or Beale Street in Memphis, and they actually use wanding or metal detectors because they want to keep the guns and knives out of that kind of open space. Is there anything that you're doing relative to that, or do you think that's not as a big of an issue?
Yes, my and again, please don't quote me on this, but my understanding is that those security officers that are manning the entry and exit points, there will be some sort of firearm detection, whether it's wanding or some of the newer technology where you pass through what looks like a metal detector, but
Mhm.
it actually is able to detect weapons. I'm not sure 100% what we ended up with, but that is a big part of it is making sure that in addition to the trying to relieve some of that overcrowding and relieve the traffic concerns, that we can confidently say that the people that are in that footprint are not carrying weapons. They're not
No.
armed with guns. And
Yeah, no, that would be a concern, that because a lot of shootings are not necessarily taking place in venues; they're happening in the public space. But yeah,
right.
um,
Yeah, and so yeah, that's a big part of it is, and what led up to that was there were a couple high profile incidents over the past year or so where people were in the bars, they were in the bars drinking, and there ended up being a shooting out in front of the bar. It caused kind of like mass hysteria, and so this is just one of the things we've implemented to prevent that.
now you said you have this dedicated unit. It started up since you left, but it's been operating since you came back. And as I mentioned before, when we worked in Pittsburgh, probably about at least 10 or 15 years ago, it was more overtime officers working for the bars, getting paid in cash. It was really a complicated and really bad system. But now you have this kind of dedicated unit. Is there any, and they're not overtime, it's like a shift for them to be working.
Right. This is these are so they're attached to what is called our police stations in Pittsburgh are referred to as zones. We have six of them. This would be these officers would be assigned. This is their full-time assignment, and they're assigned to the Zone 3 substation, which is located down in the Bar District.
Hmm.
And this is their full-time assignment. We still allow officers to work off-duty details, but we don't do the cat. There's no more cash details. We actually have we have an app that officers use on their phone, and they can apply for some of the off-duty work, and they get paid through the city payroll system. But this bar district in particular in the South Side, these officers, it's their full time. They're on duty, and they're on the clock.
So we've had Andrew Robinson, he's a sergeant who works in that detail.
I know him quite well.
He's been on two panels for us at our summit, really quite capable of representing the city of Pittsburgh. Um, and he just seems to have the personality that fits into that environment. Is that something that you evaluate or think about, or is this just like people volunteer to do it, or do you try to figure out how to get the best officers to be assigned to this unit?
Yeah, I mean, we can't look at this. This isn't a cookie cutter thing, right? Like every officer has different strengths and weaknesses, and I think it's really important that we match those officers to their assignments, right? If you have officers that are really passionate about, working with the youth, we want to try to match them up in roles where they get to interact with young people. If you have officers that are really good dealing with drunk individuals on a Saturday night, and they know how to navigate that, de-escalate situations, then I think the South Side would be a great assignment for them. Andrew Robinson, I've known him for many years. I joke around, and when I walk around the South Side with him, I said, "Are you the mayor of the South Side?" Because everyone knows him, everyone loves him, and he has that personality where he can walk into a tense situation, and just by virtue of like his personality and the way he interacts with people and the trust that he's built working down there, he's able to really kind of bring a peaceful resolution to a lot of situations without having to use force or anything like that. So, trying to match those personalities with the role, no matter what it is, no matter what assignment around the city, I think is really important.
Yeah, we had Chief Drake speak at our summit in Nashville, and they used to do, the overtime detail. And he said just putting people into that nightlife district, a lot of them really didn't want to do it. And they were quitting the force. And once he shifted to this kind of dedicated unit and he got people who actually wanted to work in that area, he said it's been a great change in terms of morale and the police officers that do that kind of work. And it's actually been more effective in preventing security and criminal activity because you have people that are there on a regular basis. Like you said with Andrew, get to know everybody and get to know the troublemakers in the district and be able to intervene. So it seems to me like it's a good approach that other
Yeah,
cities could adopt.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think consistency is key. So having the same officers there, they get to know not just the bar owners, but they get to know the people that are down there patronizing the bars. People tend to have their favorite bars they go to.
Hmm.
And it's amazing, just taking Andrew, for example, walking around with him, he knows the patrons that are coming to these bars, not just the managers and whatnot. So he kind of knows who the troublemakers are. But I think that consistency is key. But the other thing I would say is it's also important, if you are in a leadership role to monitor your people, because being down there every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, when the bars are in full swing and having to deal with, intoxicated individuals and sometimes violent individuals who, down there to start fights, that can wear on your officers. So, while the officers down there do a phenomenal job, I think it's important to know that that's not a forever assignment. That's
Hmm.
something that you want to make sure that you're giving those guys and ladies a break if they need it.
Yeah. Now, we talked when you came to our forum, and we had a discussion when we did the follow-up interviews about youth and young adults, and I think this is more particular in downtown. And you had some really good insights on what was going on, but also the challenges that you and the police face in trying to address a problem that goes beyond a policing problem. So you want to talk more about what you see as a trend and what you might have learned from other cities that are experiencing a similar growth in that youth, young adult population that either are just looking for places to hang out or in some cases are looking to get into situations of fights or there's other violence associated with their activity.
Yeah, I mean, there's just this phenomenon that we're seeing now, and I think you touched on it. This is not a Pittsburgh issue. This is a national issue that we're seeing mostly in in most of the major cities. And I think similar to what we're dealing with the adult bar crowd is having a dedicated unit that's able to deal with this. They get to know, they get to know the kids. So similar to the South Side. We have our downtown public safety center, the DPSC, and they're an extension of our Zone 2 police station. And we have officers that their entire job is they walk the beat downtown, they patrol, and they pretty much know all these kids, a lot of them by name. Um, and we're trying to, I think one of my, I would say, frustrations is that we can't treat this as exclusively a police problem. We have to engage other community partners, whether it's our juvenile courts, our Port Authority, which is our transit service, the schools, and families, the parents as well. We've actually gone to some of the homes to ask to find out, do these parents know where their kids are or what they're doing? And some of them don't know that their kids are downtown, and others have said, I'm having a tough time controlling my kid, and almost like I'd rather him be down there than at home causing
Mm.
problems. And so there's so many moving parts to this, and there's so many things that we really need to come together as a community and try and figure out a solution because if it's left up to the police, all we can do is, write citations and arrest people. And we don't want to do that. I mean, we don't want to have these kids have criminal records. We need to work with all of our community partners to find um, productive things for these young people to do, so they're not downtown causing problems. And I say downtown. I mean, we've predominantly had an issue downtown, but just the other day we had a massive gathering of 400 kids out on the east side of the city. And I think the last thing we want is to have kids with criminal records because then we know that this that perpetuates the issue and
Mm.
it makes it
Creates a
harder,
cycle.
for
Yeah.
these kids in the future. But we need to figure out how to come together and deal with this as a community rather than saying, well, the kids are fighting, just have, the police need to deal with that. We need to be proactive and we need to figure out ways to prevent these large gatherings in the first place. And so
Well,
there's a couple things we're working on now towards that end.
something you mentioned in our last conversation was that there's a social media influence, and there's these influencers that actually precipitate this type of violence as a way to engage their audience. Is that something that you see too? That this is as
Huge,
much about social media as it about just young people getting into fights?
huge issue. So everyone wants to be an influencer on social media. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I have a little brother through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and he just graduated high school. But I asked him, I said, Jaden, like you go to school with a lot of these kids, like why are they doing this? And he said, so this isn't just me, making this up. He said, oh, they all want to they all want to be influencers, and and I said, well, why don't they do some good stuff? Like, why aren't they doing positive stuff? And he said, very honestly, because that's not what gets likes.
Mm.
He said, and it's kind of like a sad commentary on like where we are as a society. But he said, people don't go on there to, see other people doing positive things. They go on there because like these fights, and some of the fights are staged. They're not even real. He said, but fights and violence, that's what makes you an influencer. That's what gets these likes.
Mm.
Um, And I mean, I'm very thankful as my as my little brother that he's not one of the kids down there.
Okay.
But it actually goes to the point, he's in a program where he in high school he's getting training to go into the automotive industry. And I said, so like, how come people and your friends are down there, but you're not? And he's like, because I have a job lined up. I don't want to ruin my future. He said a lot of these kids, they just feel like they don't have anything going for them. And that's,
Mm,
it's sad. It's sad to hear that.
yeah.
Another reason why we need to be creative as a community in solving these problems. Because if these kids are downtown or wherever fighting and posting stuff on social media because they don't feel like they have anything going for them, the last thing they need on top of that is a rap sheet because it's going to make it even harder for them in the future.
Yeah, in the Harrisburg meeting, we had the superintendent of schools, and we also had the executive director of the Young Professionals Association. And it was an interesting kind of meetup because they both were excited about working with each other. So that the young professionals said, "Hey, look, I got all these people who want to do volunteer work. I have some former athletes who played basketball. They'd be more than happy to coach some of the kids." And the superintendent of the school said, "Yeah, well, we're working with Park and Rec, and this would be a great opportunity to have some mentors, you know." So it was actually like you said, it was looking at this from a broader perspective than just a police issue. We're really, it's so interesting talking to you. And I just want to touch upon one more thing because we're a little bit over our time. But um, you mentioned the Nuisance Bar Task Force, or at least that comes up, and it's kind of something unique in Pennsylvania. I don't necessarily like the name of it because it's kind of, you don't want to be a nuisance, but
Right.
it's a strategy, an interagency strategy that really tries to pinpoint problematic venues and then take corrective action. Can you just, in a short summary, say how that works? And you said you headed that up, and what's the effectiveness of it?
Sure. So, the task force is, it's the Pittsburgh Police, it's the Pennsylvania State Police Liquor Control, the health department, the fire department. So there's a number of local and state government entities that come together, and they'll meet regularly and they'll look at the complaints that we've been getting from the community about certain establishments, and they'll evaluate. And typically, what they'll do is once a month, they'll go and they'll do compliance checks. So let's say they get, two or three complaints, about a certain bar, and they found that there's, reason enough to have the task force pay that bar a visit. They'll go there together, and they'll do these compliance checks. And it's important, I think, to have that collaborative approach because there are times where we go there and the police don't jurisdictionally, like there's really nothing, there's no citations or anything for the police to issue, but we'll find there'll be, you know, unsanitary conditions or overcrowding, things that fall under the purview of our partner agencies. So in that situation, the police would be more of kind of like a security role to make sure that there's no, everything's safe while the other entities go and do their inspections and whatnot. And so when we do have to, and again, our goal isn't to shut down businesses. We just want these businesses to be responsible neighbors. And so that I think that's another important part of it is the goal isn't to go and give them tens of thousands of dollars in citations and shut them down. It's to bring them in and say, hey, we've got complaints about the bar. We did a visit. We have found these issues. We're going to give you an opportunity to correct those issues. But if you don't, that's when we would have to leverage, the taking them to court and providing more harsh sanctions. So I think that collaborative approach is really important because a number of times the complaints that we get about the bars don't necessarily fall under the law enforcement. It might be more of a fire code violation or a health department violation.
Yeah, well, it seems to me, just talking with you, you have a lot of the bases covered, with your, understanding and importance of having officers dedicated, whether they're working with intoxicated people on the south side or youth in downtown. and then having this interagency approach to deal with high-risk venues and this experiment to try to diffuse some of the congestion on the narrow sidewalks so that you're taking away some of the tension points with the crowds and crowd management. It sounds to me like you're open to experimentation. You're working closely with the community. You have officers that you trust that can be let out and have good interactions with the types of people that they're more prone to want to interact with. Sounds to me like you got a great little system going there, Chief.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that our summer pilot program goes as expected. But I appreciate it very much, and I'm happy to come back on after we do this for a few weeks
Tell me
and
about
like
it.
let
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. We didn't even get to the sound issue, but that's for a future discussion. So, but thank you again for your time, and I appreciate it, and wish you good luck. You seem to be a quite capable person leading the city of Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Yep, and you take care.
Okay, thanks.